Late one chilly autumn night, billionaire James Harper stepped out of his towering New York office, exhausted from another long day of meetings. The city glowed beneath him, its streets alive with rushing cars and distant voices. But as he buttoned his coat and prepared to leave, something unusual caught his eye. Near the entrance of a lavish building across the street, two small figures stood motionless in the cold. At first, James thought they were just kids playing, but something about the way they huddled together made his stomach tighten. Their clothes were thin and worn, their faces pale with exhaustion. It didn't take long for James to realize. These little girls were alone. A sharp wind blew through the streets, making one of the girls shiver. James's instincts kicked in. He scanned the area, expecting to see a parent or guardian nearby, but there was no one. The city moved on as if these two children didn't exist. His heart pounded. Who would leave two little girls out here, alone in the freezing night? James quickly called for his driver and approached the girls, careful not to startle them. The older one, no older than 6 or 7, clutched her younger sister's hand tightly, her wide eyes filled with fear. When James knelt beside them, his voice was soft but firm. "Hey there, are you okay?" The younger girl whimpered, pulling at the sleeve of her thin jacket. The older one hesitated before answering in a barely audible voice. "Mommy told us to wait here, but she never came back." James felt a lump rise in his throat. He glanced around once more, hoping for some kind of explanation. Someone rushing back to claim them, a sign that this wasn't what it looked like. But the street remained the same. Silent, indifferent. His mind raced with questions. Why would their mother leave them here? Had something happened to her? Was she coming back? But looking into the girl's frightened eyes, James knew he couldn't just walk away. "Listen," he said gently. "You're coming with me. I'll keep you safe." Without hesitation, he guided them into his sleek black car, warmth immediately, replacing the night's biting chill. As they drove through the city, James stole glances at the girls in the rearview mirror. They sat quietly, the older one holding her sister close, their tiny figures swallowed by the massive leather seats. Something about them stirred something deep inside him. He had spent his life giving away millions to charities, building hospitals, and funding scholarships. Yet, for the first time, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. But what James didn't know was that this act of kindness would change his life forever, because soon he would uncover a truth so shocking, so personal, that it would challenge everything he thought he knew about generosity, fate, and himself. As the car moved through the quiet streets of New York, James couldn't shake the uneasy feeling twisting in his chest. He had spent years building his empire, solving complex business problems, and navigating high-stakes deals. Yet, at this moment, sitting with two lost little girls in the back of his car, he felt more responsibility than he ever had before. The older girl, still clutching her younger sister's hand, sat stiffly, her small body tense with fear. James didn't push them to talk. Instead, he let the warmth of the car do its job, hoping it would help them feel safe, even if just a little. By the time they arrived at his penthouse, the younger girl had dozed off against her sister's shoulder, her breathing soft and even. James led them inside, his home's golden glow a stark contrast to the cold, empty streets they had come from. The older girl hesitated at the entrance, her eyes darting around nervously. But James knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "It's okay. You're safe here." With slow, cautious steps, she led her sister inside. James called his housekeeper, Maria, a woman who had practically helped raise him, and explained the situation. She took one look at the girls, and immediately sprang into action, bringing them warm blankets and preparing something for them to eat. As the night went on, James sat quietly, watching them from a distance. He had planned to call social services first thing in the morning, but something about these two tugged at him. He knew their mother had told them to wait. But why? What had happened to her? Was she looking for them now? The next day, James made several calls. He contacted local shelters, hospitals, and even the police, but there was no record of a missing mother searching for her daughters. The lack of answers unsettled him. Had she abandoned them? Or was something more sinister at play? Days turned into weeks, and still, no one came forward. But something unexpected happened. Lily and Sarah, as he learned their names, started settling into their new life with him. At first, they were quiet and hesitant, unsure of their place in this unfamiliar world of luxury and safety. But little by little, they opened up. Lily, the older sister, was protective, always looking out for Sarah, making sure she was okay before allowing herself to relax. Sarah, on the other hand, was curious and playful, slowly finding joy in things as simple as playing with Maria's cat or coloring in one of the sketchbooks James had bought for them. For the first time in years, James felt something shift inside. Him. His world had always been filled with the finest things: fast cars, expensive suits, extravagant charity galas. But watching these two little girls laugh as they built a pillow fort in his massive living room, he realized none of it had ever truly mattered. Then, one evening, everything changed. James had been hosting a charity event, something he often did, though this time, his mind wasn't in it. He kept glancing at his phone, waiting for an update, still trying to find any trace of the girl's mother. That's when he saw her. Emily Carter. She was weaving through the crowd, balancing a tray of drinks, her hair pulled back, exhaustion visible in her every movement. James froze. He hadn't seen Emily since college. Back then, she had been bright, full of life, always talking about making the world better. But now, she looked different. For a second, he wondered if he was imagining it, but then their eyes met. She stopped mid-step, the tray wobbling slightly in her hands. "James?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. The room seemed to fade around them. James stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Emily?" They hadn't spoken in years, but within moments, the conversation flowed naturally, like no time had passed. Emily told him about her life, the struggles, the hardships, the choices she had been forced to make. And then, with tears brimming in her eyes, she admitted the truth. She was Lily and Sarah's mother. James felt the ground shift beneath him. Every question he had been asking suddenly had an answer, but none of them were easy to hear. Emily explained everything: how she had been trapped in a toxic marriage, how her husband had become dangerous, how she had feared for her daughters' lives. That night, she had left them near James's office on purpose, hoping that if anyone could help them, it would be him. James barely spoke as he listened, his mind racing. This wasn't just about two abandoned girls anymore. It was about a desperate mother, a broken past, and a decision made out of pure love and fear. And now, James had a new question. What was he supposed to do next? James sat in stunned silence, Emily's words echoing in his mind. He had spent weeks searching for the mother of these girls, never once expecting it to be someone he knew, someone he had once considered a friend. He could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of everything she had been through. She wasn't just some stranger who had abandoned her children. She was a mother who had made the hardest choice of her life. Emily wiped at her tears, her hands trembling. "I didn't know what else to do, James. He was drinking, getting worse every day. I was scared for them. I thought if I left them somewhere safe, someone would help." James took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had been angry at whoever had left those girls alone. But now, looking at Emily, he didn't see a heartless mother. He saw a woman who had been pushed to her limits, someone who had sacrificed everything to protect her daughters. "You should have told me," he said, finally, his voice softer than before. Emily shook her head. "I didn't think I had the right to. After everything. I thought you'd hate me." James let out a slow breath. "I don't hate you, Emily. But we need to fix this." From that moment, everything moved quickly. James called his legal team, determined to help Emily get away from the man who had nearly destroyed her life. With his influence and resources, he made sure that her husband was held accountable. Within weeks, Emily was granted full custody of Lily and Sarah, and James made sure she had everything she needed: a new home, financial support, and most importantly, a fresh start. But even as the dust settled, one question remained. What would happen between him and the girls? Over the past few weeks, James had become more than just a guardian to Lily and Sarah. They had become a part of his life, filling his once empty home with warmth and laughter. Letting go of them felt impossible. But as he watched Emily finally hold her daughters again, truly free for the first time, he knew what he had to do. One evening, as they sat together in their new home, Emily reached for James's hand. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You saved my daughters. You saved me." James smiled, shaking his head. "I didn't save you, Emily. You did that yourself. I just made sure you had the chance." Lily and Sarah ran up to him then, wrapping their tiny arms around him. "You're still going to visit, right?" Sarah asked, her voice small. James knelt down, looking into their hopeful eyes. "Of course," he said. "Family doesn't just disappear." As he walked away that night, James felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fulfillment. Purpose. He had spent a lifetime giving away his wealth, trying to make a difference. But for the first time, he realized that true change didn't come from money. It came from the people we choose to help, from the love we choose to give. And that was worth more than all the riches in the world.